This is day 2 of reading every day to help me speak better. Chapter 2. Thea stared at the frog. She had successfully risen from the dead for yet another day. It was 1 week after the car crash. Thea had removed all clocks from her bedroom to prevent feeling anxious at night about the hours passing. However, this now meant she spent the time feeling anxious about not knowing how many hours were passing, which she wasn't sure was an improvement. Last night, she had certainly spent many hours in bed, a lot of them with her eyes shut, kidding herself she was dozing. The sky had even a watery blue when she finally did drop off. Walking to the alarm was like dragging herself out of a deep grave. She did the usual estimation again. An hour or so of sleep. Tops. That was pretty much classed as sleep deprivation, wasn't it? Some dictatorships use that as tortures. By rights, after years of sleeping like this, she shouldn't have been walking, talking, working, driving. She should have been huddled in a corner, hollow-eyed and drooling. Mornings were finely tuned as adrenaline kicked at brain cells, not that only wanted sleep. She had discovered that mornings were not a time for decision making. She washed, dressed in the clothes laid out ready the night before, grabbed her pre-prepared breakfast and lunch, and got out of the door, her head beginning to pound. She was a bruise, and the rest of the world was a poking finger. The frog looked at her. Instead of work, this morning Thea found herself at a car recovery center, picking her way through the graveyard of other people's vehicles with an overly cheerful assistant. She clutched at a cardboard box to her chest. It was filled with the belongings that had been rescued from her car. The bright green frog sprawled on top, a present from her mother when she had bought her first car. He had a red kerchief around his neck and a button in his middle that, when pressed, played a selection of children's songs. His grin was clean, his kerchief still tied neatly, his button still working. It was as if the crash had never happened. She, on the other hand, felt as if her own stuffing was showing. We clear out the cars ourselves, but just want to check that there's nothing we miss. The man edged his stomach past the hook of an estate car. I'm okay. You seem to have it all there. I don't need to see. There you go, he pointed. The thing in front of her still had some of the essential features of a car, but they were in all the wrong places. Wheels squashed too close together, windscreen crumpled, half the bonnet missing. Suddenly the car parked around her shifted and fell away, and she was back in the driver's seat. The airbags, a cushion around her, smoked in her hair. She took a deep breath. Someone else could have ended up as twisted and shattered as the lump of metal and glass in front of her. And then, within 20 minutes, she really was back in the driver's seat. A different car provided by her insurance, the inside smelling of polish and air fresheners. All she had to do was turn in ignition key. Turn the ignition key. A woman with a clipboard stood expectantly by the car, waiting for her to drive away, smile frozen. It was now 10 a.m., and the world had come into blushing, throbbing focus. Thea popped a paracetamol for her eternal headache, stared at the dashboard, and blinked a few times, hoping that would make her eyelids lighter. The woman waited expectantly. All she had to do was turn the key. Her hand hovered near the ignition, but in her head, she could hear the grinding squeal of metal against metal, and the noise was so loud it made her fingers shake. People as twisted and shattered as the lump of metal and glass. She fumbled for the door handle and lurched out of the car, grabbing her box of belongings. Miss McKenzie, she heard the woman call out after her, but the voice was an echo, and Thea walked fast away out of the car park, not looking back. I'm sorry, she shouted behind her. Can you just look? I'll pick it up later. And she kept walking until the whole place was out of sight and she was out of breath, her eyes stinging with tears, and she hadn't realized she cried. The frog stared at her as she got out her phone to call a taxi. And once again, the notification popped up on her screen. More peace. Dream your way to a better you, one sleep at a time. Thea blamed the frog and the broken carcass of her car as the reasons why she found herself that evening in the local pub, squashed between her desk mate, Lisa, and a man from a different department with a thin face and thinner hair. The office where she spent her days moving numbers from one spreadsheet to another was a gray, open plan box. It always smelled a microwave ready meals from the encrusted kitchen in the corner. Had carpet the consistency of Velcro and an air conditioning system that had a poor grasp of the seasons. She didn't even have a desk of her own but shared one with Lisa, a middle-aged woman who filled her workspace with so many photographs, paperweights, and cute figures that they often made attempts to colonize Thea's territory. She spent probably too much of her day pushing back googly-eyed unicorn with a pencil. One cuddly car frog was more than enough for her. But this time, when Lisa had asked her to the pub for after-work drinks, Thea had said yes. She deserved a night out. She deserved the kind of night other people had regularly. One without worrying about how late it could get, and that she wouldn't have time for her wind down routine as it was Thursday and she had work the next morning, and she couldn't get up late but she wouldn't get any sleep at all, and the car crash was be nothing compared to the mistakes she could make if she was utterly sleepless. See, aren't you glad you came out? You should do it more often. Lisa's nails had tiny daisies painted on them. It was Margaret's living dreams. Thea hadn't really known that Margaret had ever arrived in the first place. Too good for the likes of us, eh? The thin man smiled. Thea thought about trying to explain it. She didn't feel like she was better than them at all. In fact, they were all quite clearly better than her. better at being human and sociable, and remembering each other's birthdays and the ages of their children. Thea didn't have the energy for any of that. She tried sleeping later at the weekends in the hope that would tide her over for the coming week, but it never did. Sleep debt, it was called, and her debt was the kind that got loan sharks circling. She would never be able to repay it, but that was going to stop. Thea thought, taking a swig of her wine, she wouldn't let insomnia continue to ruin her days as well as her nights. A life, that's what she was going to have, starting now. Cheers, Mark, she said, raising her glass with a hand that continued to shake. It's Mike. Luckily, her 7 p.m. boost of brief energy kicked in and she listened, laughed in the right places, bought drinks, admired photos of holidays and children, and did it all despite the fact that her brain began to whir and the noise and heat of the pub began to close in on her. And so, Mark, what do you like to do in your free time? He had a weak chin and there was a strange smell of him, to him, as if he'd been out in the rain and left to dry too slowly, but he seemed pleasant enough. Thea smiled. It's Mike. More photos, more drinks, more laughing, more brain swirling, more noise and heat. But the noise was welcome. It drowned out the sound of grinding metal and that she couldn't get out of her head. Lisa's perfume masked the acrid smell of burned rubber. People as twisted and shattered as that lump of metal and glass. Another Mark. She forced the corners of her mouth back up into a smile and mentioned with her empty wine glass. Mike. Shit, sorry, really I am. But she had already turned away to the woman on his other side. She couldn't blame him. It seemed that she could do everything except remember this man's name. It slipped out of her grasp every time she opened her mouth. The wine churned in her empty stomach, and suddenly she wanted to leave. Before Mike told everyone how stupid she was. Before she threw up in the wine, before her exhausted brain refused to tell her equally exhausted body what to do, and she had to be carried out of the pub like an invalid. Using every last bit of willpower, she heaved herself up from her seat and shoveled past Lisa, who tried to grab her hand and slurred something incomprehensible. Then she was out of the door, the air hitting her like an open palm. She wasn't sure if it was alcohol or exhaustion that made her steps wobble. Of course, back at home, after a bath and a ready meal, she was wide awake. This state continued until early in the morning, and at some point, during one of those red-eyed hours, she looked once more at the notifications on her phone, emboldened by the wine still fizzing in her blood. More fizz. Dream your way to a better you, one sleep at a time. She clicked on it.